you haven't already, download and install Android Studio from this link. Go ahead and install it and finish the installation. And then you can go to this Code Labs link and see the Code Labs yourself. So I'm just going to go talk about myself a little bit, just so you know who I am. I'm a senior software engineer at Intuit. I've been an Android developer for over 11 years, doing Kotlin for over 4 years. And I have courses on LinkedIn Learning and raywinderlich.com. And I also have written some books and articles on Kotlin and Flutter. So these are 2 books that I've worked on. You can find those at the Ray Winderlich site. So we're going to be building our first Android app. This is obviously for beginners to Android. I'm just going to stop the the thing here and start to go into the code lab. Again, make sure you have Android Studio installed and ready. But basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating this app here. And this is the code lab link here. It will walk you through it. But this is kind of what our finished product will be. So we're going to basically create an app that you can click the count button and it'll increase this count. And when you press the random button, it will choose a random number and show you that on another screen. And that kind of will show us how to build our interfaces, how to interact with buttons, how to color our screen, how to work with different fragments and so forth. So there's a lot of basic stuff that will really give you a broad overview of how Android apps work. So again, let's make sure that we've installed Android Studio. I gave you the link for that. So our first task is going to be creating a new app. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a app that this is what will come out of the box. It'll be like a whole hello world app. And so let's go ahead and get started on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Android Studio and choose the new project wizard. If you're in Android Studio and you go to File, New, there'll be a new project place there. And what we'll be doing is we'll be choosing the basic activity. And so I want you to go ahead and do that. Make sure you've selected that. And just once you've selected that, click Next. And then what we'll do is we'll be typing my first app. And then you can give any package name here. I've got Ray Winderlich because that's what I've mostly been working in. And then you just need to choose a location where you want to install it. I'm just going to create, this is my 3rd one that I've been working on. So make sure that you choose the location which you want. It's going to default to Kotlin, which is the language that we'll be using to do this. The minimum SDK is the minimum version that your app will work on. If you click on here, it'll show you all the different versions of Android, and these are the minimum. So once you build this and you put it on the Play Store, it will only show your app to those devices and above. So for example, the Lollipop version it'll be on, and anything above that, nothing below that. So if we look at Kit Kat, Jelly Bean, these are the different code names that they have for the versions. It will not show up for people who have those operating systems. Now that's pretty old. As you can see, if we choose 5.1, 92.3% of devices will have that. So it's a pretty big selection. You can click this on help me choose, and it kind of shows you the percentage. Obviously, the more you go back, the more people you will reach, but you also have to support a lot of different things in Android. So this gives you an idea. You can see the percentage amount goes down pretty gradually. And if you go to Android 9, you're only going to get 39%. So you have to be careful about what you choose. So let's cancel that. And then go ahead and click finish. That will start your project and we'll create it. It'll take just a few minutes to create. And of course, it's creating it on another screen for me. But I'm going to move that over here. And what it does, I'm going to see if I can increase the screen size. Let me just go to the preferences here because it might be a little bit small for you. There's a appearance here that you can change the color. Hopefully the dark mode is okay for you guys. And we'll just select the font here. Let's see if I can find the general font here. Let's see. We'll do a search there and we can see that we can make this like 16 or 18. I'll just do that. So it's a little bit bigger. So this, it shows you the first activity that you will use. Now, activities are your starting point for Android. These are the entry points that are run. So you can have multiple activities and they typically will either be one screen or in the case of what they call fragments, these are code pieces that are a little like mini activities that fit inside your screen. So you can have multiple fragments within an activity, or you could swap in and out fragments. So this is the code that is created here. And on your left, you see your file structure. This is just showing Android specific view. You have your project view as well. But this shows you your different classes. It also shows you the different resources that you have. You have drawables, which are like images that you show. In this case, this is just our icon for our launcher. We have layouts. Layouts are your UI. You'll see our activity main. And when I double click that, it will open up an editor. And you can see that on our left, we have what our first screen will look like. And this is what they call a blueprint screen. So if we click here, it'll show you different parts of it that you can click on. And I think I can click there and I'll show you down here. Your attributes are on your right where you can change the different attributes of each element. We have basically a string here, which is our, well, actually here we're including a layout, which is our first fragment screen. And that's actually where you have your button and your text view. Android has these, what they call views. Text view is obviously for putting text, buttons for buttons, image views. Recycler views are for lists of items. A fragment container is just a view that holds a fragment. And a scroll view is for putting things in there that scroll. And switches are the material designed switch that goes back and forth. So it makes it really nice. You can drag and drop things onto the screen and lay them out visually so you can see it. So it's a real nice way of viewing it. Now, if you're more of a code person, you can change the view here so that you can actually see the underlying view code. And this is written in XML. That was the decision they made in how to design layouts. So if you like doing it in code, sometimes it's a little bit easier. You can see all the different parameters of each view and change it there, but you can also change it over here in your attributes. So we'll be going through that. So we've set up the screen or the project. We've gotten through all the different views in here. I'm just going to go through some of the other parts of the code lab. One of the things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to be able to run this, of course. So you can run your app on a physical device, or if you don't have one, one of the things that you could do is you can create an emulator. So if you click on this button here, it'll bring up your list of emulators. If you don't have any, so for example, if we go here and we say delete, it will show you a view that allows you to create a new one. So let me go ahead and you'll press this create virtual device, which will bring up a screen that allows you to choose the type. You can choose it for TV, phone, Wear OS, tablet, or automotive. We're going to just do phone for now. You can pick the type of device you want. Typically, you'll use a pixel type device, or if you have a specific device you want to do. Each one has a different size, screen size, and a different resolution. So
hey, Kevin.
Yes.
Hey, Kevin, this is Larry. Can I interrupt just for a second?
Sure.
There was 2 questions that you might want to hear. Can I read them to you?
Sure.
Okay, well, the first one was from Brandon. Which minimum SDK did you use? I missed it, sorry.
Yeah, so we chose 5.1, which is the, so let me just go through here and I'll show you. If I do a new project again, and we choose basic, and it was 5.1 or API 22, okay? And was there another one?
Yes, there
Thank
was.
you, Larry. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. From Sarah, how do you open code view on a layout again?
So when I double clicked, so if I'm going to double click the second one, it came up with design over here as the one, and you've got 3 options. You can split it, or you can hit code, and that shows you just code. So it depends on what you like to work on.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Kevin. That was all.
Okay, and so let's go back to the creating your virtual device. Again, we're going to choose, say, Pixel 4 XL, and it gives you, it's got a 1440 by 3040 pixels. Okay. One of the things that is kind of important about Android is they use something called DP, or device independent pixels. So the idea is that you can choose when say your designer gives you a screen, if you have a designer, they may say 20 pixels by 20 pixels or whatever. What you'll probably want to do is use what they call DP. So it'll be 20 device independent pixels, so that when you go to different size screens, then it will resize it to fit that type of device. So once we've selected our device, let's click next. And then you'll choose the release of the API that you want to do. And this is the latest one. I've downloaded that. You can download the one that you want to have. Again, that takes a little bit of time, so I recommend you do that now. Once you've done that, you select which device, and then you give it a name. So here we're just going to say, I'm just going to call this 11 for Pixel 4 XL Android 11. And you can say startup orientation, which way. If you go into more advanced settings, you can do a few things like speed, quick boot, cold boot, different RAM sizes, different things that you want to do, but we'll just leave the minimum there. So you click finish, it will then go and create a new one. And we can then go ahead and start our emulator by just clicking the run button there. And it will come up, of course, on my other screen, but it will start a new emulator here. And then you can go ahead and close this. And one of the key caveats I'll say about this this project, when it was created, it's actually a little bit out of date. And there's a few problems if you try to run it right now. There'll be a few things that'll go wrong, and I'll explain that in just a second. But once you've got your emulator running, then you can go about and start your app up. So I'm just going to show you what happens with a app that we just created. I'm going to click the Make Project button, which over here is that little hammer. So if we click that, and you can use command keys as well, you're going to find that it probably has some errors in compiling. So here, this is what happens when I try to compile it for Android apps targeting Android 12. Down below here, if you open this up, it says Gradle scripts. Let's go ahead and fix that. We'll want to go to our app here. The problem is that it's compiling for 31, which right now is not, that's like not even out yet. So we want to change this to 30, and that will fix this problem. I'll also say this is kind of out of date because we no longer use this build tools version. You can go ahead and remove that. That basically was specifying what build tools to use, but if you don't have that, it will basically use the latest tools that you have. And you'll notice that once we make those changes, it says Gradle files have changed since the last project sync. So if we click sync now, that should fix our problem. And you can see build successful. So what we'll do is, notice how it says Pixel 4 XL11, which is the emulator I just created. We're going to click Run App. That's like this play button here. So let's go ahead and run it. And you'll see, we'll wait here on our emulator to see if it comes up and if it runs. And again, you can run this on a device if you have one. And you can see that build was successful, and voila, we have our first project. And if you've gotten this far, you have just written your first Android app, and you can say now that you're an Android developer. So hopefully we've spent 20 minutes and you've already created your first app. So that's great. Now, if we were to click this button, you will see that it goes to the second fragment. And if we click previous, it goes back. So there is some navigation already set up. If we click this button down here, it'll come up with a toast. This is what they call a toast. That says replace with your own action, and that stays up just for a little while. So let's take a look at the code and see what all this does. As you saw, we had our first screen, we have a button, we have some text here. Like I said, if you look in this app, there's a manifest file. And this Android manifest is kind of like your packaging description. So it says, for my app, how do I package it up? And you have an application. It has a name, which is my first app. It has an icon that's going to be associated with it. You're going to have a theme, and a theme is just describing like what your colors and things like that are. And then here's describing your activity. We only have one activity, and it's really important that that activity is set up as a main activity, and it's a launcher activity. And what that does is it tells the launcher that this is the activity to use when the user clicks on your icon from the launcher screen. So this is your main entry point. Again, this is the main activity right here. Usually your activities will subclass this app compat activity, which is from Android. There's a lot of things in here. There's an on create. So activities have what they call a life cycle. Basically, you have your creation starting point, your view creation, and then your teardown. So in here, you'll see, usually you'll start with in activities with an on create method. Android now uses something called a binding. When you're creating these screens here, we've created this coordinator. It will create a binding class in the background. And I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff out there. It might be a little bit much here, but hopefully this will at least get you introduced to the concepts around these things, and you can study this a little bit later. But this binding will help us inflate that layout. So it will take that XML, create the views that are behind that. Then we tell the activity that this is the view, this root view is what we're going to show. And then we're setting up our action bar, which is, if you look on here and go to the design, this part here is the toolbar. That's where you show your title of it. And then we have a Nav Controller. Nav Controller is a little bit newer concept, but it's a library that allows you to set up navigation stuff. And we'll go into this navigation folder here. And if you double click on this nav graph, this is kind of a nice view that shows you, usually it's this order, you can drag these around. It starts out with your first fragment, and we can increase the view here. You can see that these arrows say that we're going to go, this is when we click this next button, we're going to go from this fragment to this fragment. And then this arrow says we're going to go back to the first fragment. So it's pretty simple. If you click on the first fragment, you can see that we have an ID, a label, and then a name. And so that's the same with the second one as well. And then this one hooks up what they call the fab, or the floating action bar. And we set what's called the click listener. So when the person clicks on it, selects it, we want to execute some code in here. And in here, we're creating a snack bar, which we can replace with whatever we want. Here will be some setup for a menu. And if we go back to our emulator, you see that this right here is a little menu that pops up that has settings in it. And that's where this menu is being controlled here. And then here's where, when they select an item, we actually do something with that ID. Okay, so it's there's a on support navigate up. It just goes for going back and so forth. So it's pretty simple. Again, then once we've described the activity, we have our first fragment. Now, fragments are, like I said, just pieces of a screen that can go into an activity, and they have to be in an activity. So it has some of the same concepts. The only difference is, even though there is an on create, usually you'll just have like an on create view, and then an on view created, which is called after the view is created. One thing we can do is we can get rid of this question mark, because it actually will return a view. If you're familiar with Kotlin, the question mark means it could be nullable, but it's actually not nullable in this case. All right, so we've kind of talked a little bit about all the different things. Let's go on with our, again, if you guys have any questions, let me know. If I'm going too fast or I missed something, let me know. So again, we've gone through and we've talked about the layout, the designs parts. So I'm going to go through that. Let's see, make sure I've covered everything. We've got, if we go back to our fragment and we go to our design, you can see here's our component tree. Again, we've got the different items there. So let me see, we want to look at these things. We can see that the text is actually what's called a string. And if we click here, we can see that we've got a reference to in the strings file. We can use, it's really a good idea to always do that. And let me actually show this in the code. If I click here, you see how it says string, and I command click here, it will go to the strings file. Now, this is really important for localizing it for different languages. So usually what you'll do is you'll write it in English first, usually. But you can have translators translate this into every language that your app supports. So Spanish, French, German, whatever languages you use. So what they'll do is they'll just have a strings, another strings with the language specific things for it. So I would recommend never to hard code just straight English strings in your layouts. Always use a string file. So again, reference this string item there. Okay. All right, so we've shown this. One of the things we have here is what's called a constraint layout. This is a newer layout thing that allows you to basically position your components anywhere in the screen. So if we go back to the design here, we can see over here our different constraint widget. So this has these arrows going up. So that's got a link to the very top or to the parent of the view. And it's got a link down to the button here. So it's kind of like in between in the middle. And it's got a constraint to the left side and to the right side. Now they tend to call that either left, right, or start, end. So there's different things here. And one of the things you can do is they have this what's called a bias that you can change. Sometimes that does something, sometimes it doesn't. But you can also add what they call padding or margins, and you can set different values for that if you need things to be right next to each other. And we'll go into more details about that. But you could also, if you were to click on this X, it would, if I go right here and click X, it would delete that constraint and it would go all the way up to the top, which is of course not what you want. So we'll add that back in by clicking that. But you can play around with these things and it's pretty fun to do. But we'll be going through those in a little bit. So let's see. I just want to make sure I'm following this along as I go. We can see that there's text appearance. Well, here's the constraints here. One of the cool things about this is you can go through every single attributes here, but you can also search for it. So if we wanted to search for text appearance, let's see, text appearance. Let's see, there's input types, there's themes. Here's the text appearance right here. Here we've set a style. We're using an Android style, and you can use different text appearances. You can also create your own. These are created in, if you look in these values directory, there's a theme here. These are still XML, but basically what we're doing is we're setting, here's our theme for our whole app. We're setting some colors. We've set up some colors in this file, and you can see the colors on the left, which is kind of cool. Usually a designer will specify, these are hex codes. The first two is like your opacity, and then your RGB colors after that. Again, themes not only do colors, but you can set fonts. Here we got our status bar color, excuse me. And then you could set up your own. So if you wanted a text view to have different colors, different fonts sizes, things like that, you can set that all up here. So again, we'll go back here and just make sure that I've got this right. So this look, we've got our text view first, and we're going to go through and we're going to say, let's look for font family. And you can see that it's sans serif. That's the different font. Those are like built-in fonts for Android. And of course, you could set text color. You've got text color, links, and so forth. So there's all kinds of different things that you can do there. So again, if we look at the code here, you can see that, let's say that we want to set some of those fields. We can go and either edit it here or go back to our design. and we can set, let's say that we wanted this color to be an Android, and this is from the code labs here. We want Android color, and we're going to say darker gray. And we'll just go choose that there. And you can do a lot of things with just the keyboard, which is really nice. And then we wanted to set the font family. And instead of sans serifs, we want sans serif condensed. And that's down here. We'll choose that. And you can see that it's changing a little bit. This changed the size, so it's a bit bigger because it's pretty small. Text size, we're going to make this 30. And remember, for most things you use DP, but for fonts, you will use SP, which I know is kind of confusing, but that's the type of dimensions that they use for that. And so you can tell now it's looking a little bit nicer. And let's say that we want the text instead of hello world fragment, we're going to change it to just hello world. So let's go here. We're going to edit this one here. Actually, let's go to our strings and we'll just say hello world. And then we'll go back here and you can see that the text has changed. Now we also want to set the text style, which is you've got normal, bold, italic. So we want to click on there and now it's bold. And let's go ahead and run it. We should be able to run that again and look at our emulator, and hopefully it will start, won't take too long. And now you can see that hello world has been changed there. So we can see that things are actually changing. So that's pretty cool. So again, we can go through and display it. I'm going to go to the next screen. I'm on task 5, if you're following along. We're going to now add some color resources. So let's go ahead and open our color screen here. You see, these are, it's not going to be quite what they have here. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to create some new colors. We'll just start typing color name. And in this case, we'll call it color primary. And then we're going to put 008577, which is what they have, which is kind of a teal color. And I'm going to copy and paste this a few times because I'm lazy. And I'm going to call this color primary dark. And this is going to be starting out with 00 again, 574B, which is a little bit darker teal. And then we're going to have an accent color. And that will be D81B60. And you can find all kinds of things on the web that helps you choose colors. They'll give you those hex values. A lot of times they'll give you like color wheels, and you can just go around, pick the color you want, and then copy and paste those hex colors on there. So that makes it really nice. So now that we've got that in there, we can go back to our text thing, and we can go to the text thing, because this is a little bit easier. And instead of this Android color, let's get rid of Android because we want to use our own color. And we're going to call this color primary dark. And let's go back and see what happens. Now you can see that it's this darker teal color. So that's been changed. And actually, I think we wanted to change a little bit different. So let's go back here. We want the text color to be one thing, but we want the background to be this. So we're going to say background is this color, but we want the actual text color to be white. And this is going to be, I think that I want background tint or background. There we go. So now we have that teal color for the background, and we have white for that color there. And then they want us to create another one. And I have a shortcut for duplicating that line. You can create lots of shortcuts in Android Studio for doing things. We're going to create a new color called screen background. And this is going to be FFEE5A, which is a yellow, which I'm not a big fan of yellow, but you can use that there. Now let's go back to the first fragment, and we're going to set the background of in the component tree. So let's try it from here, and we're going to look for background here, and we're going to change this to color screen background. So now we've got this really ugly yellow. Sorry, I'm not a fan of yellow. Let's see. So you can see that it shows you the color there. And you can change it to any color you want. I'm actually think I might change this to something else. So let's go to our custom screen. And I'm more of a blue fan, but that's a little bit bright. So I can move this to just around there. So you can see how you can do some really cool color changes there. So I'm going to change it to blue because I'm not a fan of yellow. So we can do that. And again, let's go ahead and just rerun it just to make sure that that actually shows up. And it does. So we've got our blue color. Again, I'm not an artist, so you will probably see that the colors here are probably not the best here, and this is also part of the lab as well. So let's talk a little bit about what's called layout widths and heights. Now, you can put in specific values if you want something to be like 20 pixels by 20 pixels, or like if you have an image that has to be a certain size, you can do that. But they also have things called match and wrap. Match, it means basically take up the whole width of the parent. Wrap means to take up only the size that it needs to take. So for example, here we have wrap content. So it's only is going to take up the height that it needs, okay? And the same thing with the width. So that way you can basically center it in the screen there. So those are important concepts there. So let's go on to task 6. Talking about views and constraints. So again, we're going to look at these. If we look at the code here, we've got these constraints here. And what this does is it says, okay, I want this particular view to take its endpoint and put it to the end of the parent. So this is saying that my right side or end of my text view is going to be constrained to the end of the parent. Now we also say that it's going to start is going to be constrained to the start of the parent. So that kind of pulls it. It pulls it one way, the other one pulls it the other way. So that basically centers it horizontally. Now your top and bottom, this says I want to be constrained to the top of the parent, whereas the bottom of it is constrained to the top of the button. So that kind of drags it basically in between the parent and the button below it. And that's giving this ID button first here as the constraint. So that places it there. This one is constrained to the bottom and then left and right, and then from the top to the bottom of that. So it just basically centers it there, okay? And then again, we saw that if we go back to our layout here, we have these constraints here. And that this is, you're going to use these margins once you start putting different things on there. Let's see. So this go through here. So this adds some more buttons. We're going to drag a button. So see this button at the top here. Let's go ahead and drag this button, and we're going to drag it to the left of the next here. Now, when you drag it like this, it doesn't really have any constraints associated with it. So we're going to have to do that. So let's go ahead and add some constraints to it. And you can see that we've got these little circles. So if we click and drag, you see this arrow coming up here, we can then connect it to the one we want to connect it to. So you see that it puts it right underneath this text view. So it moves up there. So you can see that there's also an error here showing you that it's not horizontally constrained. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to constrain it to the left. And then we're also going to want to constrain it to this guy here. Okay. Now, we're probably also going to want to constrain this guy to the bottom, like that. And that places it next to this button here. So you can see how it's got these little squiggly lines, and with the constraints, it's properly constrained. You see it all here. There's no errors. So it's looking pretty good. Now, there's a few things that we're going to want to do. We're going to want to have some text, and we're going to also want to have a name for it. So right now, the default name is just button here. So we're going to call this toast button. So we just type toast _ button, we hit enter, and it's going to say, do you want to refactor this? Refactoring is a name that Android Studio uses a lot. This will change the name to toast button everywhere that it's used. And then we just got hard-coded text here. So we're going to want to create a new string. Let's click there, and we're going to click plus new string value. And we're going to call this toast button. And the value is going to just be toast. Okay. So this is the name that we will use, and this is the actual value. So go ahead and click OK, and then say OK again, and it will change it to toast. Okay. Let's see, what else do we need to do? So we've got the name, we've changed the text. It's looking pretty good. Let's see what else we need to do. So now let's take this next button, and it's got a name of button first. Let's see, we want to change the ID from button first to random button. So let's go ahead and change this. And we'll just type random button. We'll hit return. It'll tell us to refactor. We'll go ahead and do that. And we'll rename it. So now we want to add a third button. And we're going to drag this out. And we're going to put this, I'm just going to put this here for now. And we're going to want to call this count button. So I'm just trying to make sure I get this right here. Let's call this count button. So go ahead and change this to count button. Refactor that. We're going to put a new text or a string in here. And we'll call this count, and just use capitalized count there. And we're basically going to want to put this in between here. Now notice how before I had this connection here. So let's go ahead and delete that constraint by clicking the X here. So you see how it moved over here. And this guy, we're going to want to delete its left connection so that it goes over here. Now this guy, we want to do the same thing we did before. We're going to drag it up there. We're going to connect it down here. And then we're going to connect it between the two parts, or the two other buttons. Oops. Excuse me. And we've got that there. Now, I have a feeling that it puts some code in here that we don't want. So I'm going to go check that out. We've got some bias. I don't want that bias here. So we can just go ahead and delete that line. And let's make sure that I did that. It's looking like there's still some stuff here. Oh, margin. Here we go. That's what I was afraid of. So now it's more. Now you can see that these things are right up at the edge. And you notice that this is where the margins come in. So we're going to choose a margin of 16. So that gives us a little bit of edge. It's not right up against the side. We'll do the same for the next button. So let's click 16 there. Now you see that we've got 3 buttons there, and our layout's starting to look nice. All right, so the other thing we can do is we can change the text layout. I'm not going to do that. There's all kinds of things you can do to make the text look a little bit nicer. Let's go ahead and go on to task 7. We're going to update the appearance of the buttons and the text view. So let's go ahead and add a new color, and we're going to call this one button background, and I'm just going to paste that in from the screen because I want to make sure we've got enough time for everything. And so now we want to update the background color of our buttons. And so one of the things we want to do, and I think it will tell us, it tells you in the code labs to use the background, but I think we actually want to do tint. So let's do that. We'll do color button background. And let's do that on all 3 so we can copy and paste that there. This is why I like the XML, because it makes it easy to copy and paste instead of doing that manually. Now you'll probably see that the text is white, so we're going to probably want to change the and see, this is where they don't really tell you, but when you start doing things over and over again for the same elements, this is where styles come in handy. So for example, we're changing the tint for everyone. We're going to change the text size for all of them. If we were to create a style, we can create one style and apply it to every single button. And the nice thing about that is then if you need to change the style, you can just change it in the style file and all your elements change. So that's really nice. So we're going to then now do our text size, and we're going to do 72 SP. This is going to actually be for the text view. So that's pretty big. So one of the things that they do is they say, okay, change the constraint bias. See if I can do this. And this is going to be the vertical bias to 0.3. And that's not going to change too much, but it's going to make it so that it's biased a little bit vertically towards the top. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and rerun our app, and we'll see that if our screen looks a little bit different with our 3 buttons. and you will see that we have a problem, because what happens is saying that button first is not found. And so let's, what did we change? We changed the name of the button. So it's not button first anymore. It's toast button. So let's go ahead and change that. And let's go ahead and rerun it. That should work. Okay, why is that fragment first binding? Let's see here. One of the things that's really important, I'm not sure if this has it in here, but one of the things you need to do is, and luckily our template did this for us, you want to specify view binding. So let's go ahead, and sometimes these things happen. We're going to rebuild the project, and hopefully that will clean up our problem here. Because we were running what's called apply changes and restart activities. Sometimes that's a little bit of a shortcut and doesn't rebuild the whole thing. So we have, because it's not spelled that, it's spelled toast button. There we go. So let's rerun that. And with programming, there's always errors that you encounter that you have to fix and try to figure out. And you can see that we've got our buttons there, which are pretty ugly, but we've got all three of them on there. So let's go to task 8. We want to make our app interactive. I'm not going to go through the specific thing here, but one of the things we want to do is show a toast here. So let's go ahead and change this, because really the toast button isn't going to go to the next action. Here, what we want to do is we want to create this toast, and I'm going to copy and paste this here, the toast. What you're going to want to do is change this to a toast. We'll import that, and it's just going to say hello toast. And then what we'll do is we'll call the show method. And let's just go ahead and see if that actually works. Oops, this should actually be random button, because this will go to our next screen. And what happens? No, we haven't redone that. Let's try it again. And you can see our hello toast down at the bottom. Okay. All right, so now we want to make this count button update the number on the screen. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our layout here. And we're going to notice that we've got this text view first. One of the things that the binding does is, as you may have noticed, is doesn't use the underscore. It'll capitalize the first and get rid of the underscore for it. So what we'll want to do in our first fragment, and let me close a few of these things here. All right, so what we'll want to do is we'll do something similar to this, but here we'll say, let's see, we've got our count button. We want to set up a click listener for that. And then we're going to call a method when that's clicked called count me. And we're going, since that doesn't exist, we're just gonna, you can hit option return, and that'll bring up a menu here where it will create the function for us. Android Studio has a lot of nice shortcuts that you can do, so it'll create that method for you. One of the things I'm going to do that's a little bit different than the lab is I'm going to create a variable here and I'm going to call it count. And this is going to be an integer, and it's going to start at 0. Okay. So then what we'll do is once the, and this is going to be a little bit different than the lab, because I don't like the way they did it in the lab. We're going to want to say basically binding dot text view first dot text. So this is the text field. This is going to be, and what we're going to want to do is we're going to increment that count variable, and we're going to go to string. And what that'll do is it'll take 0, it'll increment to 1 the first time, then I'll convert it to a string so that the text view is now a string. So what we've done, we set a click listener to call this function, which will then update the text. Okay. So let's go ahead and rerun this and see if anything happens. Just click count. And you can see that now every time we click that, it changes. So that's worked out pretty good. Again, the lab is way more complicated than it needs to be. So I'm just making that a little bit shorter. Now we're on task 9. We're going to implement the second fragment. And so what we want to do is when we go here, this is the second fragment, we're going to update it so it shows a random number between 0 and the number we had on the previous screen. Okay. So now let's go ahead and open up the second fragment screen, and we'll just do the split view here. Get a little more room. Close this up so we have a little more room here. And then what we want to do, we have this text view and a button. So we want to remove, first thing we want to do is remove this chain here. So now it's all the way at the top. And we're going to want to rename this view to text view random. So we'll just change that, hit return, it refactors it. And you can see that it's changed here as well. And so one of the things we probably want to do since we're here, let's go ahead and put some margins there so it's a little bit better. One of the cool things about this is you could do some text that there's a thing that I've done a lot where you can do tools text equals random number. This is if you want to view something without having it being in the code. But in our case, we're going to actually put in a string here. So we want to take this, we want to make the text style to be bold. So we're going to click that. And I think that's pretty good. We're going to want to make the size to be 72 SP. So that'll make it quite a bit bigger. Let's see what else we need to do. We want to make its color, text color to be white. Color white. All right. And let's see. So let's change the text here. We want to set a new variable or a new string here. And we're going to call this, actually, let's just call this second text. And the value is going to be, here is a random number between 0 and %d. What that means is we're going to substitute that %d for some number. So let's go ahead and click that. Click OK. And you'll see that it comes out pretty big. So we want to probably, I think that was a little bit too big. It says 72 in the thing. Let's go ahead and make this 48. That's a little bit better. And let's actually, so that we could see this, let's make this black. Oops, black. So now we can see it a little bit better. It's still pretty big. Oh, I see. They're saying put it to 24. Okay, good. So now we've got a 24, and we're going to make the color the primary dark. All right, so now we've got that. And I think we're pretty good. I think they have a little bit different string name, but that's okay. We want to now create another screen background, and we're going to call this screen background 2. And we're just going to use this color that they gave us here, which is a bluish color, I guess. And we'll just go up here and we'll set this background to color screen background 2. All right, so that's lovely. Our designers are probably cringing all over the place. So let's go here again. I can see a few things we can touch up here. Let's add some borders between it. And you notice that really not much is happening. And so one trick is it should be match constraint. That will allow the margins to actually work if you didn't have that. So now let's go talk about the graph. We're going to go back to the navigation graph here. And you can see that we've got these two screens here that they'll go back here. And how are we doing on time? We got a little bit more time. I think we're doing okay. So we want to go to from one screen to another. We're going to enable what's called safe arguments. This is a specific thing for navigation. This allows you to pass arguments between fragments and do it safely. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our build script here. And we're going to, I think it's the project one. So we're going to do this here. And we're going to take this and move it into here. Now, of course, we're going to want to sync it. Make sure that's correct. Now we're going to want to go into the app script here, build script, and we're going to want to apply that plugin to it. And theirs, of course, is a little bit different. So we're just going to want to change this to ID. And we'll go ahead and sync it again. And what is it saying? Only ID. Oh, not with the colon. There's always something that you have to fix when you're doing this. All right, so that's successful. So we now have the safe arguments, and we're now going to create those arguments because we want to pass this value that's in here. It's going to be an count 0 and so forth to this second fragment. So what we'll want to do is we're going to select the second fragment, and we're going to click on the arguments and click on the plus here. And we're going to make an argument called myArg, and it's going to be an integer type. We'll click OK. So now you see we've got this myArg integer. And now what we want to do is we want to send that count to the second fragment. So let's go to our first fragment. And then on view created, we're going to want to find the, so we want to replace the code in the click listener for the random button. and we're going to want to do, we're going to want to get the current value. So if we look at this here, this actually has that value that's showing. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to say, okay, our count value is going to be equal to this dot to int. And probably first I need to create a toString and then convert it to an integer. So that's got our integer, and probably spell that right, count value. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to create our action, which is part of the navigation stuff. And we're going to pass this count value to that. So what this does, this is generated code that creates a argument. So if we command click here, you will, it'll take us to here, but this is actually generated code that is created that creates an action. And instead of navigating to this actual ID, we can replace it with this action. So then it will pass that action that has that value in there. All right, so now once we've done that, we can go into the second fragment class here. And we'll get rid of that question mark that bothers me here. And then once our, let's see, I'm going to copy this value here. I'll create a new variable called arguments, and this needs to be imported. So I will option return and then import that. So that value has been imported. So now we have our arguments. And then once we've gotten into here, once we've created it, we're going to copy and paste this here. And I'm going to change a few things. So this is going to be the count that was passed. And then here, we're going to want to get our text value here. And this will actually look at what we call this second text. And so what we're going to do is we're going to substitute that count into that string, get a new string, and we're not going to use this find by because that's the old way of doing things. We're going to say finding dot text view random, and we're going to set it to that text. Okay. And now what we want to do is add some random code, or some code to create a random number. So this is just part of Java that creates a random class, and then it will create a random number between 0 and count plus 1. So that creates that random number here. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to, so we've got, let's go back to here. We've got our value here, and then we've got, I think we need another field, and we're going to want to go back to this, and let's go ahead and create another text view in the middle. And that is going to be our text view random. And I think this is actually going to be, let me go back here, text view. And this is going to be random. And this one is going to be text view header. All right, so now we've got this here. And let's go back to our second here. So now we've got our text view header. That's going to be that. And then we want to set our text view random. And I spelled that wrong, but I apologize for that. to string. And that should do that. So let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. Did we get this correct? And hopefully, if we've done this correctly, we should see a screen with a variable. And I'm rerunning the whole thing from scratch just so we have that. One enhancement I would suggest is you set this to 0 to begin with, that text. But as we click this, again, we're counting up between some value. We click next, and it says, here's your random number between 0 and 13. And of course, you notice that something's wrong here, but that's our random number. Well, what do you think happened? Well, it's because we didn't set our constraint. We just threw that on the screen. It came up there as a small number. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to go ahead and do that real quickly and set that up there. Connect it there, left and right. Oops. And do the same thing here. And we're going to want to set the text size. Let's go ahead and text size. And we'll set that to 24 SP. So that's a little bit better. So let's go ahead and just rerun that real quick. And make sure that that gets run. I don't think that ran. All right, so we're going to go do that. And now you can see that it's centered there. Obviously, a lot of formatting could go on. But again, previous should go back. We should definitely set that to some value there. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to want to make this text, which was our first text here. We're going to set that to 0. We'll just set that to 0 because that's a string. And what variable expected? So let's just make sure I got those variables. Text view first. Yeah, that should be okay. And then we'll just rerun it here. So that's a little bit nicer. Yeah, so now we've got the 0. So we'll just keep on going. Try it again. Now you still saying 0, 6, but we got a different random number between 0 and 6. All right, you have just completed your first Android app successfully, and hopefully you didn't have any problems in doing this. If you have any questions, let me know. If any problems, again, sometimes Android Studio can be kind of finicky. One thing I will point out is that there are different versions of Android Studio. There's a stable version, which you will probably be using most of the time. There's a beta and a canary channel. Those are all like in different states of change, but you can actually run them side by side. So that's one thing that's kind of nice. Again, this is being done in an emulator. You can do it on your own device. If you've never done it on a device before, you're going to have to become a developer. And I don't know if this will show up here, but one of the things you can do is you can set up on your phone. There's like a secret way to do this. And I'll see if it's in here. I think it's see if I can remember. Oh, no, it's the build number. If you click this like a certain amount of times, it will put you in developer mode. So that allows you to debug your apps on Android. So it's a nice little secret hidden thing on Android phones. Again, if you have any questions, comments, let me know. Hopefully everyone was able to do that successfully and didn't have any problems. So again, you have just created in less than an hour and a half your first app that pretty much does quite a bit of functionality there. You can see that our settings screen doesn't do anything because there's no settings screen right now. But if you want to do that as a exercise, you can create another screen. One thing we didn't go through is how to create new items. Android Studio has a really nice feature. If I were to right click on here, I can say new, go down to here, fragment, and we can say blank fragment, and we can call this, say, settings fragment. And just click finish. And it'll create a fragment for you. We could possibly, I haven't done this, so it's possible that this may not work. So if we go to main activity, we could say settings. Let's see. So we'll do this. Actually, we'll try to set up the navigation stuff here. Let's see, let's go to navigation here, navigation graph. We could then add a new screen. We'll add that here. And let's see, I am going to make this a little bit smaller so we can get this on here. We'll put that in here. And again, I don't know if this will work, but one of the things we could do is we could say, find navigation controller, and we'll say navigate. And we'll just say navigate, and we'll do r.id.settings fragment, and then we'll return true. And let's just go ahead and see if this works. I didn't do this in practice, so I have no idea if this will work, but it might be kind of fun just to play around with and see. So do you know if there's any way to view network traffic? Typically, there's some things that you can do on performance. I think there's a tab here. Let's see if I can find it. Tools. Trying to remember where those are. Windows. Of course, now I'm blanking on there, but there is a, actually one of the key things here, if you hit the shift key 3 times, you will bring up this all selection. And if we just start typing in performance, there's different things you can do. Help diagnostic tools. This will show you some tools there, but that's not exactly what I'm looking for. Let's see. There's resource manager, layout inspector, some different things like that. Oh, analyze, I think it might be under. No. So this is for analyzing your code, for inspecting things like that. Here we go, tool windows. So we have a profile, that's what it's called. So if you do here, it will profile your stuff. It doesn't exactly inspect your code. Charles is an application for the Mac that you can inspect things, but this will show you your CPU, your memory, and so forth. Let's go ahead and real quickly see if that settings works. Yes, it does. So that's great. That worked. But as far as performance goes, this is a real good way to see how your app's performing, to check your memory, network things. We're not really doing any network stuff. One thing that this is a little key here. One of the things I didn't talk about is permissions. Unfortunately, when they create a default application, there are no permissions put in here. But one of the most basic ones that you almost always need is your internet. one, which allows you to, let's see if I can find this, google.android. See if I can remember what that is. I'm blanking on it, but it's like internet. Actually, one of the things you can do is just do a Google search on that, internet permission. And of course, because I always forget things, it's just going to be this. So it's Android permission.internet. So if you ever want to connect to the internet, you'll need that permission. There's a lot of other permissions. This is what's considered a safe permission, that you don't need the person to accept anything. If you have what's called dangerous permission, like the camera permission, the user has to approve that. So that dialog that you've seen that says, will you allow this app to use your camera? Those are permissions that you have to ask for and then get acceptance by the user. So that's important. There's a lot of other things you can do in here. You can add new activities, different things, services, which I haven't even covered at all. But there's a lot to Android. And again, I would recommend that you go to Android Studio or developer.android.com. There's tons of topics. There's documents here. There's things on Kotlin, the Jetpack libraries, Google Play. The docs is a really important documentation place where you can get all kinds of help for things. There's guides, references, and samples. It always helps, I think, to look at other people's samples to see how they have done apps, and then you can copy. I don't think there's anything wrong with copying and pasting people's code and stuff. So if it's open source and stuff, so definitely recommend that. Any other questions? All right. Well, that's all I have. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. I hope you got something out of it. And again, if you have any, need any help, there's definitely some Kotlin and Android Slack channels out there that you can join that will definitely provide help for that. So I hope you have a great journey on your Android development work.